went back to the original script that I did with not only Richard Burton but all the other guest artists, and there was at least as much material that didn't make it onto that first double album that did. And I reread the script. I think some really rich stuff here that was really from the H.G. Wells novel, then adapted for the script. And I thought there's a lot of good stuff here, and it'd be worth re-exploring. Additionally, just as a composer, as a producer, I was composing and producing through the eyes of a young musician in the 70s. If I was approaching it today, I would be using the technology, the production techniques that are available to me today. So there was a lot of things that suddenly, by being asked how would I do it today, that sort of woke up in me the sort of question mark of how would I, you know? So it was really opening up the story, exploring it as a recording in today's terms, and so the new generation was born. First as a double album, and now our tour, and they'll both be out within about a month of each other, in fact, and it includes a whole new cast on the album, not only been regrooved and the production is modern, and as a tour we'll be performing that new generation sound. The idea came from my dad, in fact, and that during that period I was composing and producing for different artists, media music, film work, TV work, music for advertising, but I signed to my fledgling label, one of the first artists that I had a great run with, a great time musically, and still good friends to this day, was David Essex. And David wrote pretty much all of his own material, so as a composer I wasn't writing as much as I had been doing previous. And my dad reminded me, he said, look, you know, you always told me, you know, one day you're going to find a story or two that you just felt so passionate about, and that because I was touring with David, he said, you're not attending to that side of your career. Why don't we both start reading some books and see what we can find? And I agreed. So comes along another tour with David, and I'm just about to go off, and my dad comes over to my house and he hands me this book, H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds. This was an easy read. It was suddenly just got me going. On one read I knew that was the one. And that was how the whole idea came about. And it took about 3 months to trace who owned the rights, because it was and still is in copyright. Unlike a story that's in the public domain that you can say, right, I love it, I'm going to do it. You don't need to clear it with anybody. And so about 3 months later, fortunately, the estate of H.G. Wells sold my dad and I, he was my partner, all the rights to The War of the Worlds. You know, I was very fortunate that Richard was interested in being the journalist, and the way it came about was almost dumb luck, in truth. When I finished composing the first draft of my score, the first draft of our script had been completed pretty much in parallel, and there was a cast of characters, and there was this one acting role, that of a journalist, who is the one character that sort of travels all the way through the story of The War of the Worlds, and he's recounting his story of survival some 6 years earlier, and he's recounting it for his newspaper. And I thought, on a recording, what I would love to be able to achieve is to work with an actor whose voice, the second you hear it, just sucks you, the listener, into your world, in this case our world of The War of the Worlds. And I'd like to say I had this huge list of people that I admired and whose voice was the type I'm just describing to you, but in truth I didn't. I had this very singular list of one name, really at the top and the only name at that moment in time, and it was Richard Burton. And okay, that's great, easy to make a list. Now how do you find that person? And it just, the dumb luck, so to speak, was that I had a friend who had just come back from New York and mentioned they'd seen this play called Equus in New York, and it was starring Richard Burton. And he said he was brilliant in it. What an actor. Well, I think a lot of people knew that already, but on stage, to command a whole show, that's pretty tough to do. And I thought, well, okay, if he's in a theater doing 8 shows a week, at least I can write to him, send him a copy of the script, introduce myself, what I was trying to do as a composer and as a producer. And I chose to send it to the stage door of the theater and hope that the man in charge at the stage door would actually hand Richard my little care package, which he did. And I get a call from a man named Robert Lance, who was Richard's manager at the time. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, after, "Hello, how are you?" He said, "Richard loves the idea. Count him in, dear boy." Count him in, dear boy. My goodness. It was a very difficult but simple decision. Difficult because emotionally I was parting with somebody whose voice and I got to know individually, you know, over a 33-year period. You know, every show that I conduct, I'm looking up and hearing and seeing Richard. So to move on and away, that was tough. But what was easy was the fact that there was a genuine reason to open up the story. And then, just as a statistic, there's 74 sequences of Richard on the album, and therefore in our touring productions to date. With Liam, there's 90. So it gives you an idea of how much, I believe, really rich material there is for not just the role of the journalist, but other characters as well that we've opened up in musical form or storylines as well. With Richard, as I was explaining how, you know, by good fortune he came to be involved, Liam was exactly the same. I didn't have a second name on a list again. I listened to tons of actors, great actors, but when you sort of close your eyes and just listen to a voice, there aren't many whose voice on their own can just capture your attention. And again, I just got lucky. Liam was keen. I didn't know until I met him in New York when he expressed an interest, got on a plane to meet him, and he said, "By the way, I have a copy of the album, bought it when it first came out." So I thought, wow, you know, that's good fortune, and it came on from that.